Now, we're starting off today by giving you a tutorial of how to use CATIA v5. In this case, I'm using version 19, but most of the CATIA v5s will be similar in nature, and this tutorial should work for all of them, maybe except for a few features that won't matter right now. Now, if you've listened to the podcast episode that we've published on CAD packages, which probably is out by the time this video is released, we'll talk about why you should use CATIA. But at this moment in time, I'm just here to give you the CATIA tutorial by yourself. I'm going to show you the way I learned how to use CATIA very quickly and very simply, because I don't think there'll be a perfect way to do this in a long drawn out process, as sometimes just CATIA takes a lot of learning from mistakes. So a lot of your mistakes will happen, and the problem solving is the way that they fix. Make sure you read error messages perfectly when you find them, and just in general, just persist with the program. It takes a while to get to know, as this program is quite complicated compared to other CAD packages which tell you a lot of the stuff that you need. So we're going to start with creating new things. So when you open CATIA, it should open like a workbench like this. This is how you'll see. So there's all this. The Anovia V5 doesn't really matter right now, so we can just close that. Now you'll get loaded into a new product, or you should do before you get started. We don't want a product right now, we want a part. So we're going to go File, New, then we're going to go down here, and we're going to go Part. Once we go Part, we'll click OK. Now we get these three planes and everything that we want. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of these tools here. These tools that are currently displayed here are not the tools we want. So if this happens, we do not want all these shape modeling tools because they'll be later on. We can just go Start, which is next to the Innova V5 in the file. We go Mechanical Design and Part Design. And that will open us into the workbench we want, which has all our basic tools that we'll need to create a very basic car. Now, one of the things I really like to do, and kind of like for this application, is inserting an axis system. So if we just do that quickly, and you'll see that we don't need to change any of this. It will usually just default to where the origin in the model is. That's wonderful. So we can go there. And now I've got an axis of everything I want. And if you want, you can just hide all those. That's very easy. So now we know what the X, Y, and Z profiles of our car should be. Now, before I start designing cars, I always like drawing very basic sketches that tell me what my car is going to look like before I just hit it with 3D geometry straight away. So I like to use the ZY plane to draw all my stuff on, as like the X coming out the side of the car. This isn't always necessarily proper, but we're just going to do it that way for this tutorial. Really play around with the way that you want to do it. Just make sure the Z's usually at the top. The X and Y doesn't matter hugely. It really depends on the orientation of your axes. So you'll see here, I've gone for a position sketch. The difference between a position sketch and a normal sketch is a normal sketch will just assume your vertical and horizontal and what it's mounted to. This can be useful when you're using an axis system, and generally it will give a alright answer, but if you want to be real proper and learn the skills correctly, a position sketch is very useful as it allows you to control everything. So we go to position sketch. We don't want it on the XY plane. We want a position sketch, and I'm going to choose the ZY plane here, which will give us a wonderful there. And then this will choose the origin. The origin is chosen from that, which will just go there, and the orientation will just given from the direction of the plane. Now I can reverse the horizontal direction by clicking that. I can reverse the vertical by doing that, and I can swap them so the horizontal and vertical interchange. Now this is actually the orientation I want, so I'm just going to keep this through the way it is. So we're on the side profile of our car. Hopefully if you've installed your program right, everything is in millimeters, and you'll see that your car or your sketches can start very easily. So let me just take you through the tools really quickly. So to draw things, which is going to be the first thing you want to do, there's the multi-profile tool, or the profile tool in general, what this allows you to do is just draw straight lines, and they continue to connect until you stop it. So something like that. You can also do some other funky things with them, but we won't do that now because it's a bit annoying to control. The square tool, we'll just draw or squares or rectangles. That's pretty simple. And now this has a drop-down menu where you can draw all these different kind of shapes, like an elongated, a centered rectangle, and stuff like that. I reckon just play around with all of those because they're really important. Then you've got your circle tool, which if we click correctly, we'll just draw circles with a center, which is really easy, really nice. And then you got your 3-point circle, so effectively you choose 3 points on your circle, and then you get the circle you want, which is really wonderful. Next you'll have a circle using coordinates, which just means you choose the intercepts of the circle and it will draw them. I try a tangent circle, that's just using 3 tangents to select a circle. Now, the 3-point arc tool and the 3-point arc tool with starting limits, they're two different things. In almost all cases, I'd suggest using the 3-point arc with starting limits because it's very much more helpful. In my opinion anyway, just play around with these, you'll see why. But effectively, you choose your 2 points, you start your endpoint, and then you choose the circle in the middle for the 3-point arc with starting limits. So this is very, very simple, very easy. And you've got your spline tool and your connect. You probably won't need those for this tutorial, so it doesn't bother me too much. Just play around with these. I'm assuming that you've got a bit of CAD knowledge behind you with this tutorial, so I probably don't need to explain the functions of all the tools, but you can just draw just straight lines through that. It's pretty useful if you just want to get an absolute straight line. That's a point, so you just insert points. And then the rest won't be a problem right at this moment in time. So we can draw our first kind of shape. So I'm just going to make our car body a box with the point at the top or point at the front. So I'm just going to do that to begin with, and I'm going to draw a point. So I'm just going to get that. You'll see that a lot of these will just snap into place. This isn't very good, but it's just trying to show you. When you're drawing, you would have seen before that a lot of this was snapping into place and using limits. So see, you can go here. You see the blue line that comes up. When you dot it, that will show that it's in line with the horizontal up there and the point up there, and it can move along. And then you'll see the blue point when it goes vertical. These blue points effectively just signify where a constraint will happen. You can turn this off, but usually it's pretty useful, so I just keep that on. It gets really messy when you're doing like heaps of things in one sketch, but for most of the part, you don't need to worry about that too much. So we're just going to draw a very simple box to begin with. Now, you can see these 2 green lines and there's 2 white lines. So these green lines, I cannot change the length. Sorry, I cannot change the height that they're at, and I cannot change the starting position. So say I can change the length of the line, but I can't actually change the location of the line. It's just a continuation of the line that I extend or contract. As for these ones, I can definitely change the height and the length. So nothing's constraining them too much. There's no position that they're holding to, and there's no position that they're holding to. Now, the general rule of thumb is you always want your sketches to be completely green. So what we're going to do is we're going to just constrain that down to say 25, and that just leaves this one left because then the height can't change, and the only thing that can change is the position of this in the Y direction. So that's all good, and we're going to constrain that to be 180. Now look at that, that's very simple, very easy. So what we can now do is, oh, by the way, this is the constraint tool. This will be very useful for you in the future. This just tells you the distances between things. Now, if your sketch goes purple, this means that you've got too many constraints and it can't no longer do the same thing. So if you notice this one, This is saying that this is 25, and this is also saying this is 25. Now this makes sense logically, as it's just telling you the same thing twice. However, CATIA treats this as that's forcing it to be one length, and that's forcing it to be one length. It doesn't matter of what the length is, because I could change that to 30, and it will have the same effect. It will try and drive this geometry 2 different times. So what we can do is we can just click the reference here, and then that will change that and just be a reference that will tell you how long this is. So we can change that to 30, and that will change to 30, to that 25, that can go back to 25. So that's all good. Now, that's the very basics of sketching. There's a few other things that we might want to do. We might want to draw a line like this. Oh, we didn't want that one, so we'll just delete that. That's just using the delete key after selecting. So we want this point to be on that point there. So we go up here. We hold control, we click the 2 points that we want. Now we select this constraints defined, and then we go coincidence. Coincidence is a very similar, I think it's called the same over many different packages. And say we want that to just extend out to maybe 210, which is the maximum length of an F1 in Schools CATIA. Easy. So now we can only change the angle. So we can define an angle by going like this. So selecting the line you want, and then selecting another line that you want to angle it between. This will give you angles. In this case, I want this to be horizontal. So I can then go back to this box and then just click horizontal, which will do the same thing. But this is all useless. That was just to show you how the different constraints in the dialog box work. So we can delete that, and these don't really matter at this moment in time. So we've got the first thing that we want to turn into 3D geometry down on a sketch. If we look at this now, wow, look at this, really cool. So now what we want to do is we want to thicken this effectively. Now this is where the pad tool comes into handy. Now you'll see that we've got a sketch in a part body. This part body will contain the main elements of your car. As your models get more complex, you'll have more and multiple of these, and you'll even have geometric sets. But at the moment, we're just trying to make this very simple for the user. So yeah, we want to pad this. We click the pad tool over here, which is just a square with another square coming out of it. Click on that. Now we want to go here. We click on the sketch that we want. We can click it in the tree, or we can actually click the lines. Now, we've got a lot of control with this. So first we can choose how we want to do it. In this first case, we have to use a dimension, unless we've got other planes in the model, but that's probably a bit too advanced at this moment in time. So we'll go dimension and say, I want to make this 15 wide. And look at that. So now it's giving us kind of a preview of what we're going to get. We can then choose to make it a mirrored extent so it goes both sides, but we're not going to do that. We can see that this is what it wants to create. And then we can also go the other side. So I don't want it in the first 5 centimeters, so I can go -5. And then you can see it goes in from where it would originally. But at this moment in time, we want it over the center axis, so that's just going to stay at 0. Everything else doesn't really matter, except maybe the reverse direction, which will show you it will put it to the other side of the model. That very useful. I'd suggest having a massive play around with pads, see what works, see what doesn't. It's really fun to play around with this kind of stuff, so it's all good. So here we are. We've got our very first part of car body. Wow, look at this aerodynamic improvement. Okay, so we've got what we want. This is what we wanted, kind of. So now it's time for the more interesting parts of the car. So this is going to be our car body. And we're going to build on this in part 2 of this series. Thank you very much. This is Jesse Stevens, and I'm out.